Hello, Hammers! Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned to keep up with the biggest Hammers stories. West Ham United have finally received a piece of news that, while far from solving all of their problems, offers a rare sense of relief in a season defined by defensive instability. Amid an ever-growing and increasingly diverse shortlist of centre-backs, ranging from experienced Premier League-proven figures to little-known young prospects from continental Europe, there is now tangible confirmation that Nuno Espirito Santo's primary defensive target has returned to the picture at the most critical moment possible. From Charlie Cresswell to Nathan Ake, and from Rogerio Niakosi to Thiago Gabriel, West Ham's recruitment strategy has cast a wide net in search of answers to what has become, both statistically and visually, the worst defensive unit in the Premier League. The recent emergence of Brentford veteran Ethan Pinnock as a potential option only underlines the urgency. The club know there is no margin for error if they are to avoid a disastrous conclusion to the campaign. The numbers are unforgiving. After just 21 league matches, West Ham have already conceded 43 goals, almost identical to the total conceded across the entirety of the 2020-21 season, when Craig Dawson and Angelo Ogbonna formed a disciplined, experienced, and well-drilled partnership. That defense, built on leadership, positioning, and game intelligence, now feels like a distant memory for supporters forced to watch the team collapse repeatedly without consistent resistance at the back. It is not an exaggeration to say that figures emotionally tied to the club, such as actor Ray Winstone, mirror the collective mood of the fan base, a sense that something fundamental has been lost along the way. This West Ham side do not merely concede goals. Too often, they gift them. Through basic positional errors, poor communication, and a chronic lack of recovery pace in defensive transitions. Against this backdrop, the club have received what can only be described as the news they needed. Brazilian centre-back Alexandro of Lille has returned to competitive action after almost 3 months sidelined by injury. More than a routine comeback, this marks the re-emergence of the defender, who was internally identified as Nuno Espirito Santo's #1 target to rebuild the backline shortly after he replaced Graham Potter. The irony is that Alexandro's return could hardly have been more dramatic, or more human. In his first start since September, the defender was shown a straight red card after just 13 minutes. Clearly short of match sharpness, he hesitated in possession, was dispossessed by Briel Embolo, and subsequently brought the striker down on the edge of his own box. It was a costly error, but also an understandable one for a player returning to the intensity of League One football after a long absence. Inside West Ham, however, the reaction has been measured rather than emotional. The Brazilian's return, even with such an incident, confirms something vital. He is once again available. For a club desperate for immediate solutions, that single fact significantly alters the landscape of their January planning. Sources close to the club had already confirmed back in October that Alexandro was the first name on Nuno's defensive shortlist. Initial discussions over a potential $25 million fee and the feasibility of a deal had taken place before the injury cooled the pursuit. Now, with the player back on the pitch, the question has shifted from if to when, and under what conditions. Time, though, is brutally short. West Ham require instant impact. They need someone who can step in, organize, lead, and stem a defensive bleeding that threatens to drag the club towards an irreversible fate. Alexandro's return represents hope, but also a dilemma. Whether to trust a player still regaining rhythm or continue searching for alternatives who may not possess the same technical ceiling. At the very least, one thing is now clear. The club are moving. The defense will not be ignored. And for the first time in weeks, the narrative surrounding West Ham is not defined solely by desperation, but by the genuine possibility of reconstruction. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. To fully understand why a renewed move for Alexandro carries such significance, it is necessary to look beyond the current campaign and into the recent history of West Ham United. The defensive fragility that now defines their season did not appear overnight. It is the result of a slow and almost unnoticed rupture from a model that once served the club exceptionally well. During the 2020-21 campaign, West Ham built one of the most effective defensive units of their modern Premier League era. Craig Dawson and Angelo Ogbonna were never glamorous names, but they embodied something the club has always valued: reliability. They understood the rhythms of English football, mastered positional discipline, and knew how to suffer when required. There was no panic, no unnecessary risk, only structure. That back line allowed the team to compete, to believe, and to recognize itself on the pitch. Since then, the club have drifted into a poorly managed transitional cycle. Departures, injuries, signings that never fully integrated, and constant changes in the dugout have gradually eroded any sense of defensive continuity. Today, Max Kilman and Konstantinos Mavropanos form a pairing that, despite physical tools and individual qualities, inspires little collective confidence. Communication is inconsistent, spaces open too easily between lines, and leadership, once taken for granted, is conspicuously absent. It is precisely this void that Nuno Espirito Santo is attempting to fill. Appointed following Graham Potter's departure, Nuno arrived with a clearly defined reputation: a coach deeply committed to defensive structure. His most successful spells, particularly at Wolverhampton Wanderers, were built upon compactness, tactical clarity, and center-backs capable of defending aggressively while remaining comfortable in possession. Alexandro's emergence as the priority target is no coincidence. The Brazilian fits perfectly into the defensive archetype Nuno seeks: left-footed, physically imposing, quick across the ground, and technically secure in build-up play. He represents a clear departure from the current profile within West Ham's back line. This is not merely about adding depth, it is about redefining how the team defend as a unit. At Lille, Alexandro was developed within an environment that demands tactical intelligence from its defenders. The club have long prioritized center-backs who can operate in a high line, cover large spaces, and initiate attacks from deep. It is no surprise that internal comparisons have been drawn with Lenny Yoro and even with Gabriel Magalhaes, another former Lille defender who successfully transitioned to the Premier League. Former Lille head coach Paulo Fonseca publicly highlighted that Alexandro offered greater speed and aggression than Yoro, along with superior physical presence in duels. For a West Ham side repeatedly punished by balls played in behind and rapid attacking transitions, such attributes feel almost essential rather than optional. The Premier League is unforgiving to slow defenses, and West Ham have paid that price relentlessly. There is also a crucial psychological dimension to consider. Players like Dawson and Ogbonna were not merely defenders. They were emotional reference points. They organized the line, instructed fullbacks and midfielders, and imposed order under pressure. That authoritative voice is now missing. The current defense reacts far more often than it anticipates, a dangerous habit at this level. Any incoming center-back must fill that leadership vacuum, and Alexandro's profile suggests a player capable of assuming responsibility early. His red card on return inevitably raised concerns. Yet, viewed through a broader analytical lens, one mistake does not erase months or years of positive assessment. If anything, it reinforces the reality that the player will require context, confidence, and continuity. Ironically, those are precisely the same elements West Ham themselves are desperate to rediscover. The January transfer window has always been a treacherous period for clubs in distress. Prices inflate, negotiations stall, and short-term fixes often prove costly in the long run. That is why West Ham's persistence with a clearly defined target, scouted and desired since October, points towards planning rather than panic. This is not an impulsive reaction, but a return to a path temporarily derailed by injury. The dilemma is stark: trust a player still regaining sharpness, or continue patching a defense that has already demonstrated its limitations. Historically, West Ham have fared best when committing fully to a clear idea, even when risk was involved. The club rarely thrives on improvisation. It thrives when identity guides decision-making. Perhaps then, Alexandro represents something larger than a single transfer. He symbolizes an attempt to reclaim a lost defensive identity, a bridge between a recent past defined by competitiveness and a present desperately seeking stability. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. What is at stake for West Ham United extends far beyond a single signing or a minor tactical adjustment. The club find themselves at one of those rare and dangerous junctures where short-term decisions carry long-term consequences. A renewed pursuit of Alexandro encapsulates this perfectly. It is not simply about strengthening the defense, but about deciding who West Ham want to be when the dust finally settles. The threat of relegation, while still mathematically avoidable, looms persistently over the London stadium. Every goal conceded amplifies the tension in the stands. Every defensive error resonates louder than any chance created at the other end. This is a supporter base shaped by decades of turbulence and resilience, one that recognizes instantly when a team is emotionally fragile, and this West Ham side undeniably are. Not through a lack of effort, but through a lack of foundations. Historically, the club's most respected sides were built from the back. From the days of Upton Park through to the move into the London Stadium era, the teams that linger in collective memory shared a common trait. They were difficult to beat. They may not have dominated possession or dazzled aesthetically, but they competed relentlessly. And for West Ham supporters, competing is a fundamental expression of respect. That connection now feels fractured. The defense no longer inspires confidence. The midfield plays with the fear of exposure, and the attack, and however talented, operates under the constant pressure that any mistake could prove fatal. It is a cruel domino effect, and reversing it requires far more than marginal tweaks. It requires a clear and deliberate statement of intent. This is where Nuno Espirito Santo assumes central importance. Nuno is not a manager defined by grand speeches or empty promises. His career reflects a belief in process, in structure, and in players who understand precisely what is demanded of them. For his model to function, however, he requires specific profiles, particularly at the heart of defense. The continued insistence on Alexandro, even after a long injury layoff and a turbulent return, speaks to conviction. It suggests the club are not merely reacting to the present chaos, but attempting to implement a logic capable of surviving beyond this season, regardless of its eventual outcome. A center-back with pace, technical quality, and the ability to operate in a high line may not solve everything, but it alters collective behavior. It frees fullbacks, compresses space, restores confidence to midfielders, and, crucially, reduces panic. For the supporters, that matters almost as much as immediate results. West Ham fans can accept defeat. What they cannot accept is apathy, disorganization, and a loss of identity. There is a profound difference between losing while fighting and losing without direction. The revival of a clearly defined target, studied and desired for months, sends a vital message. The club are still thinking, still planning, still believing that a path forward exists. Of course, the risk is real. Alexandro may take time to reach his peak, may require adaptation, may fail to deliver the instant impact the league table demands. Yet the alternative risk, persisting with solutions that have already failed repeatedly, may be even greater. Football rarely rewards inertia, especially in a league as ruthless as the Premier League. There is also a deeper symbolism at play. West Ham are a club intrinsically tied to notions of character, hard work, and players who understand the weight of the claret and blue shirt. Every signing is judged not only by performances, but by what they represent. A defender arriving to shoulder responsibility amid turmoil must possess personality as much as talent. He must embrace the challenge rather than shy away from it. Whether Alexandro is that player remains to be seen. But the very fact that the club are seriously considering this gamble suggests an attempt to reconnect with their own essence. Rebuilding the defense is not merely a tactical necessity, it is an act of identity. It is a declaration that West Ham refused to accept collapse as an inevitable outcome. West Ham's immediate future will be decided in details: a timely interception, a more compact line, a leader who organizes and calms. Sometimes the difference between survival and surrender begins exactly there, with the right profile at the right moment. Alexandro's return to fitness may not represent a definitive solution, but it is undeniably a crossroads. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.